Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week.
How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spirit Talk, and today we welcome Frank Robb to the show, aka Alligator Rob. Frank has spent 28 years in the field of wildlife conservation, and he's the founder of the Environmental Education, Awareness, Research, Support, and Services nonprofit organization. And Frank, it's great to have you on here today.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here, buddy.
It's when I started the podcast, there's certain avenues or different ideas and concepts I want to talk about, obviously from the security world to martial arts, to mental health and leadership and fitness and stuff. But I think one of the areas I really gravitated towards is conservation in wildlife. And I've had friends, everyone from Harry Turner from the Wildcat documentary to Andrea Crosta, who started Earth League International. And so I did this huge last 2 years of rabbit hole stuff from ivory protection to the invasive species, especially in Florida, where I spend a lot of my time. And I figured it's about time I have someone else on here again in the wildlife and conservation field.
Oh, happy to be here. Happy to talk about it, man. Yeah, thanks for thinking of me.
And I followed you for a while, and obviously I gravitated towards the Alligator Rob handle on all your social media. But I guess I never realized, and maybe before we even get to that part, how did you kind of fall in love with wildlife? Because for someone to dedicate almost 30 years now to this, was there a catalyst or something in your childhood, or maybe your parents or your siblings, where you're kind of like, I need to do as much as I can to help animals and wildlife?
Without a doubt, yeah. So I started at a pretty early age. I want to say, had early memories with my dad. He was a professional land surveyor, and we would go out on the weekends and we'd cut property lines out. And cutting property, if nobody's ever done any land surveying, it's one of those jobs that it's a very hard job. And my pop did it successfully for a very long time, but we'd cut out boundary lines on the people outside of people's properties. And sometimes this was in the middle of nowhere. And those property lines might be, anywhere from 1,000 feet to 5,000 feet. You didn't know. He'd turn an angle and go like, we're cutting that way. So we'd get out in the woods and a pair of machetes and, start cutting. And you'd come across all kinds of interesting wildlife, snakes, bats, you name it. Something was usually crawling around on you. You were going through the middle of it. And it was a great opportunity for my dad to be able to pick those things up and show them to me, talk to me about them, where they, this is different. This is a yellow rat snake with the red pupils and a red tongue, and this is a variation that you usually see in the Everglades and stuff like that. And that was a huge part of it. And then I want to say, as a freshman in high school, I started helping my uncle, who Gator Bill, hence the Gator theme, catch alligators. And it kind of became a profession from that point. I knew early on in doing this, I wanted to look at things that not only benefited the wildlife, but benefited us. So, I went back to school, got my biomedical degree, and started really digging into all that. It's
interesting, and maybe it's a good starting point, the idea that animals and humans were all in the same circle of life, right? But if something's wrong with us, it could be affecting the animals. And I think, at least for me, at the start of the pandemic, and obviously you're here now, it's just one of these things where you're kind of like, what was the correlation between when the human race started suffering and going through everything with the pandemic? How did that correlate to the lifestyle of all the animals, specifically alligators? And I know you've talked about a lot about the correlation, how the American alligator is directly affected by our actions or inactions. And so maybe that's a good part to kind of start off here.
Yeah, that's a very deep question, a very excellent question. It's a hard thing to explain, I guess. An alligator's biggest weakness is also his biggest strength, which, with all crocodilians, it's their intelligence. They're a brilliant animal, a unihemispheric brain, very similarly related to the dolphins. I mean, they're super, super smart. They can solve problems and work their way through things. And they're consistently finding easier ways to do things. And that the biggest part of that is usually with feeding, which sometimes comes hand in hand with fishing and a lot of other public use kind of things. And when that stuff started going away in the pandemic, a lot of that changed. You've seen with all wildlife, you've seen a lot of wildlife traveling in areas they weren't traveling in before because the people just weren't there. So you'd see them end up in odd places. maybe more so than any other time. I know in some of those circumstances they were already doing it, and that just allowed people to be focusing on it like super heavy because everybody was stuck in their cave for a while. But yeah, it definitely, I think, changed up their habitats and in the way they're moving.
Does that have a direct correlation to, say, an alligator attacking someone, or is that more territorial, not really conducive to a change in behavior?
It's very rare we actually have an alligator, attack. It's usually and typically it's people that are either just super unaware of their surroundings, or they believe they're bulletproof and nothing can happen to them. I mean, you're in the security world, so you understand that as well as anybody.
Right.
Complacency is kind of at an all-time high in our country. Just the ability that you believe, hey, you know what? This could never happen to me. There's no way anything like this could ever happen to me. And then the awareness factor, which people they're not keeping aware of what's going on in their surroundings. That can fix a lot of those problems with those, I say makeshift attacks. For most part, it's people making a huge mistake. Every now and then, I've caught thousands of alligators, and every now and then I'll meet one that is a legitimate rogue bad dude. I mean, just like people,
Right.
Every now and then you meet that one guy, you go, that dude's trouble. Like that dude, I'm going to have trouble with that guy. I know it's coming. I need to get myself out of the predicament before it goes that way. Wildlife's the same way. Every now and then you meet one who is something different. You can almost see it working and kind of go, okay, that's a problem. But for the most part, it's people screwing up. 99.9% of the time, it's us being screw ups.
When you hear stories of, say, a kid crawling inside a neighbor's doghouse and getting bit, or a person that gets bit by another animal, it's like it seems like the laws are very protective of stupid people doing stupid things. Kind of like what you're saying. It's like, at what point do the animals have rights? And maybe that's not the right way to look at it. But for me, I'm always like, well, hold on a second. Why are we putting this dog down, or we're going to shoot this bear and euthanize this mother elk that stampeded someone? Because why? Because it was like, it just, what could be done on that part of it?
Well, see, that's the weird situation where I see both ends of the spectrum, because I've worked the nuisance side of things, and I've worked the conservation side of things. And I try to explain to people, conservation's kind of a cube. There's about 6 or 7 sides to it. And every time you think you understand every side, you see a side, and it's like, man, that might not be a pretty side of this cube, but it's part of the conservation side. And sometimes that deals with having to do away with an animal. Really, if you deal with something that's hurt a person, whether or not it was that animal's fault or not, it's kind of already happened at that point. And usually the most reasonable thing to do is to move away from that animal, which really, really sucks. So there's nothing glorious in having to put an animal down or move on from it, but we still are the more important thing than they are.
Right.
It's just, man, it's a hard concept to wrap your head around. But there's, like you're saying, there's different levels to that too. If there's somebody being an utter jackass that gets
Right.
themselves hurt by something, yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. And you got to realize that, and I think you do, that again, a large percentage of the time, it is someone being a screw up that causes these things to happen, and the animal has to pay for it. But again, sometimes people don't walk away from that jackassery either. Excuse my language.
No, I'm all for it. And so when it comes to educating general public, or even whoever, whether it's federal, state, city council, whatever it is there ever any overlap with laws and stuff, information that comes out where it makes your job more difficult with your organization, in terms of, if you educate a city, well, the city law might be different than the state law, or the state law is different than the federal law. Like, how do you kind of navigate that overlap? Or is there a push to have something where it's universal conservation laws?
I don't think you'll ever see a universal conservation law. There's too many different things in too many places, and too many people with too many different ideas that just they'll never correlate. Or it's like so many things. It turns political is what it turns a lot of times, which is sad too, because conservation should be beyond politics, but it somehow finds a way to get itself back in there. A big education, like you're saying, is a huge part of what we do. I mean, there's a local city that we're doing education for this week. We'll be there talking to their employees about, hey, here's things to worry about. Here's things to keep yourself out of this predicament. Don't do this or don't do this. We do that for Blue Origin last week out at the Kennedy Space Center. We do it for NASA, for DOD, all the way on through. And it's a consistent battle, and education is the key that answers that unlocks all this. It's just a matter of, can you have one voice saying all that, or is it going to be a million different people with a million ideas pushing that education from different angles, which is kind of the truth of it. There's no one person that's really, a lot of us have tried to be that person, but there's no one voice saying it the same way.
And now, obviously, like myself, you have relationships with game wardens and people in that field. It's like, how vital is that open communication with those other groups and people that are obviously on the same page with what you're trying to accomplish?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, I work hand in hand with law enforcement all the time. We just finished doing a big educational talk and a safety video for our local sheriff's office here too, and that's huge. Making sure they know, hey, look, this is where we stand on things. This is the way things should be handled. Please, let's start a discussion and make sure things are handled the same way every single time. That makes all the difference in the world. It's education. The same thing you're talking about. Getting the information out there and having people on the same page that you're on. There's no better way of going about it.
Now, obviously, you've had your fair share of calls with people, hey, I need to get this alligator or snake, whatever it is. But your famous one with Chance the Snapper in Chicago, I didn't realize when that story first broke, because I follow I like weird news stuff like that. Now, talking to you and doing research on you, I didn't realize that was you. And so how does that even call come about? And I just love the picture with like the mayor and everyone behind you. Like, it's such an iconic, really cool thing you were part of.
Yeah, it's one of those conversations that always gets me very emotional. I try to hide it, but I guess that was 2019. It's going on 4 years. It'll be 4 years ago this July, but I'm very well known for the work I do. Very, very blessed to be the voice for a lot of this stuff when it comes up. And they up there in Chicago had been chasing this gator around for a while and were unable to work it out. So they reached out to the state of Florida and some local gator farms and people. And luckily enough, everybody was able to drop my name and say, hey, you want the guy? There's your guy right there. Go talk to Frank Robb. He does stuff like this. This is the fella you want.
And when it comes to capturing an animal like that, what's the policy in place for, is it rehabilitation or put it back in the habitat it's supposed to be in? Or like, how do you kind of, if something's been living in a person's backyard for a couple of months, obviously they're used to the human interaction and the certain shelter and stuff that the yard's providing. But when you have to get rid of those animals, is it tough to reintroduce them back to where they belong?
Yeah, there's no really reintroducing an animal like that into the wild. It's like that one up there in Chicago, Chance, as they called him.
Yeah.
I think it was between Chance, the snapper, Frank Lloyd White, Ruth Gator Ginsburg, and Barack Obama. Yes, those are the four name choices they went on. Which I was watching this all before it happened up there. I thought it was hilarious. But there's no real reintroducing an animal like that that's never been in the wild back to the wild. That was an animal that was somebody's pet for a long term that they had turned out. It's there's some species of wildlife that you can be able to have reintroductions like that with. Crocodilians they're not ideal pets in the first place. There are people that successfully keep them to do educational programs and stuff like we do. We keep a few for educational stuff that are, that's what they do for a living. There's no intention of those animals ever being released. When it's time to take them somewhere to get a smaller one or to trade them back in, you take them to an approved facility where they can live their life off in happiness, which is what happened to Chance. He's at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, a place that they breed crocodilians to sell to different zoos and places around the world. Those animals have never been in the wild. Those are animals that are there just for conservation, educational based talks, just like me and you were having.
It's now, obviously, you've probably been asked this question a ton of times, and I know the difference between crocodile and alligator, but I guess my question is, if they were next to each other, who establishes dominance first? Say they're both equal size, in an ideal scenario, is there one breed or one ant type that would oversee the other in terms of like dominance?
They're just like us. So there's 26 species of crocodilians. Some people will now argue 28. That's what, a handful of years ago there was 23. It just they keep finding new things, but they're all different. They all have different personalities. The only place you find alligators and crocodiles together in the world are right here. And now that's being argued that there's a little bit of that happening in Mexico now too.
Right.
But yeah, that's right here in Florida. They're not the interacting type. I know we've raised up some gators that made it to 9 feet, and those are down in a place in South Florida now, and those gators whoop up on crocodiles. I mean, when they see them, they purposely go, "Okay, you're the guy. Oh, you're different, and me and you fixing to have at it." But they're where crocodiles can be more communal. Alligators are a very solo species. There's no one that whoops up on the other. They all want their space, and they all want to kind of do their own thing.
When every time there's like someone releases this video of like this alligator walk across like a golf course, and the thing's a monster. I love it because I'm like, holy, like this is a dinosaur. Like this thing is so amazing. It got this big without being killed or getting murdered, whatever. But when you see something like that, there is got to be some sort of fear in people, like for someone like you, right? Like if you're called to kind of get this thing out of here, like I think the video, I think it was pre-COVID, where it looked like this thing looked like Lake Placid or like one of those crazy alligator movies where it looked fake, but this thing was massive. And it's like, is there a need for that big of an animal to be out in the wild? Like what's going to stop that outside of human taking care of it?
There'd be no, I mean, alligators have no desire to have an interaction with a person. That is, these interactions you see are typically aided by people feeding them, or again, right. Or just not being aware and being very complacent, thinking something can't happen. An alligator in the wild is a ghost, man. They want nothing to do with people. It could be the biggest alligator ever heard of. You could have a 15-footer laying on a bank somewhere, and you could be across the way or even paddling by, and they're not going to want anything to do with you. It's just not the way it works. Now, knowing that and being complacent about something still being like it's never going to happen, that's still a different story. But as my uncle used to always say, you never tempt the devil. You know what I mean? You never put it out there that, hey, I'm untouchable, because that's the time something terrible happens. But they're not looking to have that interaction. Now, there's been some instances here over the past few years. Like there was a elderly lady that got killed that was swimming in a wild
I saw
area.
That, yeah.
Again,
what are you doing?
You're tempting things, man. You're tempting things you shouldn't be tempting. Those are situations you can't blame on the animal. That's a bad result for the person and the animal. Anytime you have a bite like that, you have to, first thing I always think about, like, man, I feel terrible for that person and I feel terrible for that animal, because not only is that person hurt or dead, that animal just bit the dust too. And it's something that could have probably very well been avoided.
Yeah, I think that's what the point I was trying to get across. It's like a lot of times when that news story breaks, you go, I read the comments, which I probably shouldn't, just to get pissed off. And a lot of people are like, we got to curb this population of the animals, these alligators, or it's a snake bite, or we got to kill all these snakes, or it's like, she had every right to be there. And it's just like, well, hold on a second. The animal kingdom, we're part of that too. And it's like, I just wish, and I know we already talked about it, but there's something along where it's just like they had more rights in terms of, hey, if that alligator was going to our party attacking our daycare full of kids and we kill the alligator, I get it. But that's like me going to like an alligator den or a coyote den or seeing pups and picking up the pups. And you don't think those don't deserve to be bit or scratched or slashed? It's just comical.
Yeah, people still are more important than an alligator's. A person's life is still more important than an alligator's life. It's the tough truth. I'm sure there's a lot of people we'd probably argue against that case on, but that's still the case. Our lives come first. But again, alligators aren't walking out and looking to have that kind of interaction with someone. That's not the way they operate. The last thing they want to do is see a person. Believe me, if they see a person, they're having a lot worse day than whenever you're seeing them, because then you have everybody taking pictures of them and posting it on the internet, and next thing you know, somebody's made a phone call about this to some agency, and they're disposed of, and it's a terrible situation.
Is there a like a hunting license you can get to shoot alligators in Florida? Is it like deer? If it's like you have one tag, or like how's that work for that?
There is a public water hunt that FWC does. I think it's $2,500. You pay $2,500. They give you 2 tags, and you can go out into specific areas, which are called AMUs or alligator management units, and you can take a couple alligators. Never done it. Don't ever desire to do it. There's people that enjoy it. That's more power to them. It's a big revenue source for the state of Florida. So, yeah, everybody has their things they enjoy. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. When in terms of, and I think part of that is, like, I understand. I grew up, my mom's side of the family is all dairy farmers up in Western New York, and with corn and like all the crop up there. The reason why they hunt, like, sure, they go after the bucks and stuff like that, but they're a species where it's just going to destroy the crop. And it's like, it's a part of their lifestyle. You got to feed the cows, and it's like the circle up there where it's like, that's why I respect hunting. It's these people that, do I think it would be cool to have, if I had like an old library with a big crocodile like staring at me stuff? Sure. But I also, up to the point now where it's like, if they're not bothering me or my family, or like, even if they are, what can I do to make sure that animal's not affected by me? And it's like, I think people, these big trophy hunters, or it's like, how hard is it to kill an 8-foot alligator in the water? It's just on the beach somewhere, or to shoot a zebra, or it's just, I don't get it. I get the financial incentives of it. I don't live in some of these cultures, like in Africa, where you can hunt an elephant because that money is going to feed that village, or meat's going to feed the village for. And so I think it's we're kind of thrown into this idea of this, where we're just kind of, I get both sides. It's like, I'm just trying to navigate through here. That's why having people like you on the podcast kind of helps me understand kind of the world you're living in.
Yeah, it's not a binary thing. It's with some of the things, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's can I wrap my head around that side of conservation? Which, like I said before, it's a very complicated cube. It's a very complicated cube, and that's there's times where, just like you, I don't understand it. I have no desire to go kill a zebra or kill an elephant, right. Or that's not up my alley of things I want to do by any desire at all. But everybody's got their things, man.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? One of the hot topic issues out there right now is the invasive species, obviously in Florida. And I know, so I guess to kind of lead it off, how does that affect your job as it comes to preserving the livelihood of the actual species that are supposed to be living in your areas you work out of?
So this is excellent question. And, here recently, I've been gathering more and more data on this. We do a podcast through my nonprofit called the EEARSS podcast. It's EEARSS. And we just recently, the one we just did, we had a fellow named Robert Ozaboff. He's a virologist and an invasive and exotic species guy with UF, University of Florida. And, what people don't realize behind all these exotic invasive species, you can argue that however you want to. That's a whole hot topic right now too. Is it exotic? Is it invasive? Is it either one? Now that the population's established, you can go on forever with that. But these animals bring their own things with them. They bring their own bacterias, viruses, parasites, fungus, and this stuff that's the scary part of this. Having those animals here, that's something that, wildlife and nature finds a way to balance itself out.
Right.
These other diseases and these parasites and things they're bringing with them, that's a whole different level. We have these, snake fungal disease now that's all the way, it's all the way up into the north end of Florida. We have parasites that are jumping out of the Burmese pythons and into native species. We have this type of bacteria that came from some island in the middle of nowhere that's now affecting brown anoles in St. Petersburg. And talking to this guy, Dr. Oz, he was saying that there's a possibility that could jump into people. And if that does, it's a type of bacteria that doesn't alert basophils, which are your first responders to inflammation. And if that doesn't happen, you don't even know the thing's there. Your body never fights it. It kind of just eats you. I mean, there's all kinds of these crazy things going around that these animals are bringing with them. That it's a lot to wrap your head around, man. So it's not even about the iguanas and the geckos and the chameleons and whatever else it is. It's the things they bring along with them that they go hand in hand.
Yeah, so I guess I would definitely have to check out that episode, because in terms of, it's almost like, do they create, these doctors, these organizations, do they create through research the vaccine, like how do you vaccinate? Does this something just run through a species and then it jumps to the next, or like how do you? Because eventually it's like I get the idea that I do think obviously nature does sort itself out, but if you these foreign entities and these crazy bacteria and stuff, like how do you prevent that from jumping into the American alligator and affecting now it's in your world now it's like how do you stop this from jumping over like that?
That's the problem they're trying to figure out. And so there's so many parts of that too. You have, the world's climate's changing. You have pollution. You have all these heavy metals, forever chemicals, food supply. You have so many things within their world that are changing. And the more we get these high level pollutions, these high level pollutants involved, the more likely it is these different viral things and bacterial things are jumping from species to species. And that's how it all starts going wrong. I mean, it's just, I don't know that there's any easy answer to that. And there might not be a real easy answer to that. I know we just recently here it's been an ongoing thing with alligators over here on the side we're at. I'm pretty sure across the state where you see sick ones, top immune system in the world, top of the line, blood kills every known virus and bacteria on contact. I mean, the top of the food chain with it as far as it comes. And you're seeing viruses get in their brains and like wipe them out, where they'll basically drown themselves. One of the guys who's a trapper up in the north end of the state found this gator that was twitching, making all kinds of crazy things on a golf course. And this same fella, this Dr. Oz, he took this gator and they found a new type of virus in its brain. He said when they did a necropsy on the thing, he called me. He's like, it had lesions all over its spinal cord and its brain. And he's like, it looked like herpes. But whenever we went in there and actually looked at the virus, it's a new type of virus called a CHU virus that had never been seen in crocodilians. It's something that had jumped from snakes over to alligators. So stuff like this is happening more and more, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I don't think there's any real answer to it as far as, hey, can we catch all the wild, coach and give them all a bath and get the snake fungal disease off them so they quick transmit it to this or that? Can we catch all the Burmese pythons and give them a shot to get rid of the parasites so that the parasite that's small in them, when they get in other things, it won't become large? I don't think there's any answer to it. I really don't.
And what's sad is, alligators, you're literally living dinosaurs, years and years and hundreds of thousands of years. And now, is this something that obviously, when it say a Burmese python gets let loose or a hurricane knocks out some zoo and all this other crazy birds and frogs get into the wild and whatever, there's only so much stuff that nature has an effect on. It's like humans have to be the reason why this stuff is now affecting animals or plant life that's been around for hundreds of thousands of years, right?
Oh yeah,
because nature doesn't create this stuff, right?
We're the blame for all of it, without a doubt. We're the ones that are finding a way to screw things up. Yes, without a doubt. It's one of the things that always makes me wonder about people. Space flight's awesome. We live here on the Space Coast. It's very cool. It's like, do we just want to go somewhere else and screw something else up, or can we try to fix the problems we have here first, guys? It would be pretty awesome. I mean, alligators in space are a pretty cool idea. Don't get me wrong, but.
Well, yeah, it's your point where I love space exploration, go everywhere, right? But it's like, have we even studied half the oceans or the streams or rivers or ponds, let alone the forests? It's like you hear about these new species being found. It's like, well, only could be a couple of months until they get killed because we doing something stupid. We don't have it's just, I love the sciences, but I think we need to spend more time, to your point, understanding how to preserve the ecosystems and cultures and stuff we have here on our own planet.
We're wiping stuff out at an astronomical rate. And, every now and then we are finding new species, which is very flippin' cool, but we're wiping species out at just an astronomical rate. Seeing as we're talking about space, astronomical seems like a good perspective.
I read something, just last week I read that they found this new Amazon spider. It looks super crazy, like this big pig thing. But then you read about them, another like a special jaguar that's almost going extinct or could be wiped off, or the vaquita in the Sea of Cortez, which is being poached illegally. But then you see something like, oh, they're gonna bring the dodo bird back, or they splice DNA here, they're gonna create this. It's like, at what point, like this idea of humans being God, in that world, it's not only is it fascinating, but it's super frightening.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Yeah, with the crocodilians alone, it's what 84% of them are critically endangered, which I mean they're getting wiped out for the oddest of reasons. Like the gharial over there in the Middle East and India and stuff. Their sand is going away. The sand they use to nest in. It's one thing after another with each one of these species, and man, people aren't awake to that now and not realizing what's going on. It's all this stuff's going away very fast.
A couple of years before the pandemic, we did this food and wine event down the I think it was I actually do think it was Cocoa Beach, but we had this event all advanced. And we're getting ready to do it. All these famous chefs from Food Network were coming in, and we get a call a couple hours before. Hey, I think we found a turtle nest. The EAP's here, and I'm talking to this guy, going, "Well, put some fencing around it, like a couple of cones. No one's gonna drink wine and step on them." But then they start realizing this whole beach is filled with these eggs. And so talking to this guy, I got to understand that the turtle eggs are so protected, and this whole layout where the event site had to move and the protection there. And so it's like, can you kind of talk about when stuff like that happens, like how in tune are you with not only preserving like the ecosystems, but I guess security for certain stuff like that, where it's like, this is what needs to be done if you want to do this, especially in Florida.
Yeah, the place you're talking about is 5 minutes from my house. Yeah, I live in Cocoa, which Cocoa's right around the Cocoa Beach, right around the corner. We have one of the top sea turtle nesting beaches in the world, right here between Playa Linda Beach and then all the way down south to Archie Carr there. But yep, we take our sea turtles very seriously. It's a huge source of our conservation, and it's another species that, man, sea turtles are great and awesome, but we realize we know so little about really their life cycle, how long they live, we have an idea where they go out and spend most of their lives in the Sargasso Sea, but we're not exactly sure about all that. It's every time we think we know something about those guys, we're learning something new. But yeah, with wildlife security and as far as securing the wildlife, you can never go far enough. That's the way we always look at it. You go above and beyond. You take every precaution you can possibly take for the wildlife's sake.
Is there ever a time, well, I'm sure there is, where you're doing that for one species, but it could affect another species, or the local bird, the osprey population that's nesting, and they got their rights? It's like, how do you kind of juggle all that stuff in an area, specifically Cocoa Beach or even Florida in general, where all these animals have these different things where it's going on at once with mating and all this stuff, and like it must be kind of crazy where like, well, we got this issue, but that could affect this type thing.
Yeah, I listen to the biologist out with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife talk about things like this all the time. That's not my job per se, but I know they consistently, them and FWC and your local counties and even your local city, like you're saying, they all have these issues and they all have different perspectives and different ways to look at it and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And if they're going to clear a lot and they find a hawk that's in a tree somewhere, this group says they can clear it. This group says they can't. Is it nesting season? Is it not nesting season? Everybody's got their different perspective and idea on it.
Could you kind of talk us through what's a busy week for you, or what's a week or a couple of days recently where you're kind of like all hands on deck with your organization?
We did safety for Apple TV here a couple of weeks ago, where we were did a little over a week of 20-hour days with them. They were filming a movie out there in the Kennedy Space Center, and it was keeping the actors away from having alligator interactions. And I think the coolest thing we had one night was a coral snake on set.
Oh,
he was eating a red rat snake. It was the coolest flipping thing ever. And one of the guys like, so what are you gonna do? Like, we're on a wildlife preserve, guys. We're gonna watch him finish eating. Well, then what are you gonna do? We're gonna watch him crawl away, and we're all gonna go, yeah, man, good job. Hope your dinner was awesome. But our typical week is research. We do a lot of biodiversity research over here in Brevard County. So we look at different species traveling back and forth between habitat types. I mean, every day's spotted skunks and possums and all kinds of different snakes. It just all depends on every day what's going on. And then between the research we do in North Carolina with NC State, and then down in Belize we're doing crocodile research with them. It's a little bit of everything, and still doing some nuisance work when it shows up out there at the Kennedy Space Center, and for DoD occasionally too.
Would you?
And then a few things around the county every now and then.
You recently posted a picture. Well, you post a lot of like when you're holding snakes and stuff, and I'm deathly afraid. I think I've held the big snakes before because I think they're there. They're not going to eat me or be there. It's when I don't know they're there where I'm just deathly terrified. It's like it kind of alongside with education when it comes to kids or even adults to get people to kind of understand that a snake isn't a snake's more afraid of you than you are of it. And it's like for me, it took the longest time to kind of realize I'd always be in the arm of the lawnmower. But like if I see a snake, I'm gonna drop the mower blades. But now I'm just like they're just. It's like for me, it was like the education of it, where it's like I thought they're gonna bite me and all this type of thing, and now I'm just like I don't mind it actually.
I wish snakes would chase me. It'd make my life so much easier. It'd make everything so much easier if I could just go outside and maybe blow a whistle, have them all come to me, or to go, hey guys, I'm here. Don't come get me. Whatever you do, yeah, that'd be great. It doesn't work out that way. Yeah, they're a secretive species, just like crocodilians. They want nothing to do with you. I mean, they think about it. They've had a bad rap forever, man. Since the pretty much the beginning, everybody's wanted to kill them all. So yeah, their survival depends on them getting the heck out of Dodge and staying as cryptic and as well hid as they can. And typically in most neighborhoods here in Florida, the snakes that are surviving are the most cryptic ones. You got your black racers and things, and then you got your yellow rat snakes that spend most of their time in trees, being an arboreal snake. And it just the more cryptic they can be, the more likely they are to still be alive. But it's a hard life being a snake. You got to figure they're food for everything too, right? They're
Right.
food for the birds and other mammals, and they're just snakes and roads don't go together well at all either. So it's just if they had wings, they'd be so much better off.
Yeah,
But
probably
work out so well.
a bit scarier too. It is fascinating because in history, whether it's religious stuff all the way through even like the 80s and 90s, all the movies, like everything was a snake is demonic or it's just going to eat you like Anaconda or even the alligators, which it's just so fascinating. I think it comes from a lack. Yes, they look scary, but the lack of understanding. Where back in the 60s and 70s, it was so easy to make like demify these animals because it's like we don't know enough about them. But it's like it's actually like when I with my nieces and stuff, we go like to zoos or like all this stuff, or like even watch those Disney movies where now the alligators or the snakes are like the good guys. And it's like it's kind of cool to see that kind of that switch where it's like, hey, just because you're an alligator doesn't mean it's a bad animal.
Yeah, it's one way or the other, isn't it? It's either people are deathly afraid of them, or people are doing the silliest possible things they can so they can put their videos up on Instagram or YouTube so they can get a few likes. There's very few in between. Unfortunately, there's such a fine line there between being education and being entertainment, and people are just consistently taking that line and pushing it as far as they can because they're making it about themselves instead of making it about the animal. That's the kind of stuff that takes me off. If you're going to do educational stuff and leave the entertainment stuff alone because it's just nobody's learning anything from that. They're thinking, you know what? I wonder if I can do something that silly and get away with it. So here, let's go try it. But yeah, I know that went off topic, but I wish people would, if they're going to do educational stuff, would leave it as educational stuff and forget the silly crap.
Well, that's why social media is such a weird. I mean, it's fascinating, and there's so much negative, and there's a lot of bullshit with it that's not necessary. And I don't even. But when it comes to podcasting or showing stuff, like everything you post there has to be some sort of benefit to it, whether it's helps them with mental health, just something positive. It's like this negative stuff. So when it comes to like TikTok through the pandemic, and you'd spend hours because really it was nothing else to do, looking at stuff. I found myself gravitating towards the people who would talk about like survival skills or the wildlife. Like I learned more about alligators and flying squirrels and bats and all these crazy eels and stuff from all these shows. But it was these people like yourself that you put out this information. It's like it's up to me to, if I want to know more about this, either follow you more or do my own research. And I think the power of social media is really awesome that way, that if it promotes that, like you said, that type of further education or just understanding. And I think with like yourself, the Alligator Rob stuff you put out there, here's a guy that's trying to educate people about what's going on in the animal kingdom.
I compare it a lot. It's very similar to writing a scientific article in my point of view. As my job as someone writing a scientific article, it's my responsibility to put good information out there, right? And then it's your responsibility as the person reading it to go, okay, look, wait a second here. here's all this data. Now, what exactly is this data telling me? Where can I take it and go with it from here? It's social media is the same kind of thing. You know, I use mine to try to be a blessing to others and to try to put good information out there about animals that sometimes people don't know anything about or have a false sense of ideas about. You know, I have a goal to try to be as blessing as many people as I possibly can, because many people have been a blessing to me. You know, if it wasn't for wildlife and for, you know, for alligators in general, you know, I wouldn't still be here today. So it kind of is what it is.
And you went through a health scare with your heart a couple of years ago, and I find it interesting that here you are helping and educating other people and saving animals and all this stuff, but then in turn, the people that appreciate what you do were able to help you with some of your medical bills, which, I mean, that's a whole other discussion in terms of what they get away with. But I thought it was really cool that these people could kind of come and be like, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. I think that was something really cool about your healing process.
Yeah, you know, as a person of faith, that's the whole reason I was put in Chicago in the first place, I believe. You know, that made that trip up there. A lot of cool things have happened from that. A lot of cool things continue to happen from that. I think since I caught that gator up there, I've been up there almost 30 times, if not a little bit more. It's really blessing after blessing, and the whole heart thing really was one of those. Yeah, I found out a year after being up there that I needed to have open heart surgery. I had chest surgery as a kid. It was a real serious thing when I was a little guy. I had a metal bar for a year. They had broke all my ribs and reformed my whole chest when I was a little fella. And you know, I couldn't find a doctor who was willing to do this surgery. They're like, man, you're too high risk. Like, it's not something we're comfortable doing. You know, I went all over Mount Sinai up there in New York and Northwestern in Chicago. Like, hey, you know, come up, we'll figure it out. Come up, we'll figure it out and do it for you. I'm like, listen, guys, if I'm going to do something like this, I kind of want to be close to home, to people I know and my family. And like, you guys tell me you can wing it and tell me you can do it are two different things. So, you know, I reached out to my friends up there in Chicago I'd made. They helped me find the heart doctor who did my heart surgery. And then, yeah, like you're saying, the people that, a lot of people who appreciate what I do, and the people up there in Chicago raised the money to pay all those health bills off. So it's, as someone who didn't have insurance and was doing this because I love what I do, that was huge to me. That was 2 years ago last week, and I'm super duper blessed without a doubt.
You kind of hinted at it, but the connection with humans and animals, especially when it comes to like whether it's PTSD or like mental health, or even kind of like the therapy dog type stuff, it's so interesting how the connection with humans gets stronger, and how an animal or even a random animal that this person falls in love with can help heal them. And it's like, I always wonder if like those animals realize what they're doing or the impact they have.
I think they do. Yeah. I mean, I think animals are so much slicker than we give them credit for. I really do. And especially those, you know, it could be a dog or a cat or whatever it might be, that they know what they're doing for you. The same way I think they get it. I really do think they get it.
Because you can see it like the animal, like the cat or dog's eyes specifically, like they're emotional. They make a noise. It's like, it'd be kind of cool if like say someone like you got hurt and you got better, and then an alligator like did like this cool tail whip, or like you knew he knew. Like I guess for me, I guess I need to get a better understanding and research more how to look at animals if they're hurt. Like if you see a hurt bird, you can tell if it sounds weird, it's walking weird, like there's something wrong with it, right? But some animals that are hurting, I guess like humans too, you just never know until you kind of find out, right?
Yeah, it's true. I know with crocodilians, they don't ever forget interaction they have. I mean, literally, they're like an elephant. They never, ever forget interaction they have. So every time I travel to St. Augustine now and see Chance, I'm pretty sure he cusses me on contact. I'm pretty sure. As soon as he sees me, he's like, "You jerk, man! You're the dude that made me on that long trip.
I'm taking too many pictures in this place." Yeah. So I guess to the point,
I don't think they forget.
Right. So if you were abusive to an alligator, or you rescued it from a zoo or a farm that was abusive to them, they don't forget. How long does it take for a learned behavior like that to come off of an alligator and feel like he'd be safe around someone like you, if it's like one of those research alligators?
So I know the research gators, the ones we work with in the wild, they're the same way. Like if you have an interaction with them, like say you catch them one way, you catch them on a fishing rod, you're very unlikely to ever catch them like that again. Because every time they ever see anybody with a rod in their hand, from that point on,
yeah.
they're gone like a ghost. Some of the old school guys who used to be trappers here in Florida, if they went to a golf course, they carry a dress shirt and a pair of dress pants with them because man, they know they can pick you out of a lineup and go, that guy's the one that doesn't belong. Like hang away from that dude. It's trained behavior. It's just like with people. It's very hard for them to get over it. And you got to keep in mind that's what's kept them around for so long. Not forgetting those kind of things, knowing that we're bad news. That's a natural thing in their system. They go, people. I don't want to be around people. That's not something I want to be around. So I think a lot of times for wildlife, that's a benefit to them. Remembering those things, those bad things that happened to them, that's kept them here. Why would they want to forget it?
Right.
So I can argue that from both directions, really.
When you have that Dr. Oz, obviously other experts in the field like that, and that information comes out to you and to your organization, is it difficult to kind of, if information comes out that you're like, this is so left field, but these doctors are saying it, is it tough for you to kind of process that and change your approach to what you do? Or is this something where it's like the doctors and stuff for the animals and stuff and the virologists and stuff, it's as time goes on, you just adapt and kind of move forward with a new kind of like the stuff you learned?
No, I love surrounding myself with people who know a lot more than me, which isn't hard to do. There's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me in a lot of things. I love surrounding myself with those kind of people where we can all bounce ideas off each other. It's the old school thing, iron sharpens iron. I mean, I want to be around those people who can give me a different perspective. It doesn't mean you have to go with what they say, but having their perspective and their ideas on things, it makes you a better person. Why wouldn't I? Yeah, by all means. And if somebody can say, hey, what you're saying is wrong, here's proof of it, by all means, I love the idea. I'll look at it a totally different way and be on board with it in a second.
And I guess along those lines, is it difficult when you go to like conventions or speaking engagements where there's other people in your field? Like, is there ever a sense where it's like some of these people have too much ego, where they don't accept other information or willing to adapt, like you kind of like how you do with some people don't like being surrounded by people that are perceived as smarter, or maybe they are because they feel that obviously they're insecure. Is that ever, I assume that would get in the way of what the actual goal here is to protect wildlife.
Yeah, it's the ego thing within the wildlife world it's a legit thing. It's 100% a legit thing. When you start making it about yourself and not about the wildlife you're working with, that's when you've went too far. It's like we were talking about earlier on social media. When you see people doing stupid stuff, they're making it about them. It's at that point you got to decide: do you want good information, or do you want entertainment? Sometimes They do come together, but for the most part, if you see somebody doing something that you think's a little bit silly, it's silly. So yeah, when that ego gets involved, that's when people are starting to look for clicks and views and seeing how many stupid things they can do at the same time. Man, can I stick my head in this thing's mouth and get away with it? Maybe I can. Yeah, that's when they've probably taken it too far. Yeah. But there's a definite line there between ego and handling things the right way, and they should never go hand in hand.
You mentioned being a man of faith. I'm openly Catholic, and I talk about this stuff when I can on the podcast. But as a kid, I was always fascinated with like Noah's Ark, right? Like the 2x2 and all these animals. It's like I want to believe all that, but when it comes like to science stuff, it's like, do you know whoever the organization or person that finds if this did happen, this ark and the remnants of these animals, it's like it'd be like that's my holy grail right there. Because I just as a kid, I just love that story. Whether it happened or not, the idea what came from it is what you should be getting out of it, not necessarily that the kangaroos were hanging out with the alligators, but so something like that happens, like it was just so cool as a kid going through like the CCD and like confirmation and like learning about God and all this stuff. It's like the one thing I was drawn to, I mean, you had Jonah the whale and you had the Noah's Ark. And it's like I always loved that animals had this sense about them in that aspect. I don't know. It's so fascinating to me.
Oh yeah, I love looking at animal stuff in the Bible. Here recently I've been doing a study of serpents in the Bible, which is, man, you want to dig into a deep one sometime? There's your deep one. It's not always bad. There's a lot a lot of wisdom that came from serpents in biblical times, and it's a different part, a different part of the world, obviously.
Right.
You're thinking Middle East, and you're thinking at a time long before there were medical treatments. So whenever somebody saw a snake over there, they were legit terrified for a reason, because that was, if you got bit by one, yeah, you were done. Yeah, that was the end of your line for sure. So it's interesting to look at different things like that. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, again, it's like, just like you as a person of faith, it's you get some blowback about that sometimes, but for the most part, people in the conservation community, we all have our different thoughts and ideas on things, and we especially people in the crocodilian world, we try to build each other up. It's not like that. You're not going to say, hey, man, because you're an atheist, I can't work with you.
Right.
You try to understand people for what they are and what they believe in, and love the person for who they are, regardless of any of that, which is kind of my jam.
No, 100%. It's like, it's one of those things too for me. It's like, at what point was the first person that, like, hey, we got to give a shit about these animals? Like, what was the event? It's like, did the dodo bird go away? Did the timber wolf, like, whatever it was that disappeared? At what point did people kind of put their differences aside, come together, and be like, what can we do as a human race to save as many animals as we can? Yeah, I've always just kind of like, you hear about wildlife conservation, and for me, it wasn't until I got older through college and realized, like, there's people out there, organizations, they're doing this stuff. But where was this in the 50s? Like, it wasn't a thing, and it's like, what caused it to be a thing? And I only can imagine if this was a thing when prohibition was a thing. It's like, how much further along we'd be as a civilization.
I think if you look back at some different writings, conservation's been around for a very, very, very long time. I think as long as we've been around, I think conservation's been there, in one form or another. Maybe not in the form we see it in nowadays, but I believe people have been looking after wildlife and habitats and things of that nature for a very long time. Zoos are kind of a new thing in the United States. Maybe you're
Right.
looking back at World War I times, World War II times. But around the world, zoos and conservation's been there for hundreds of years, maybe thousands.
And to your point, I guess when you look at it, like, I always love like the Davy Crockett's or like Jim Boone or like the Fredbear type stuff. But when you look at now, you say that they didn't say they were conservationists, but they were, because they promoted healthy hunting and taking from the land what you only need. It's such a fascinating. It just, I guess maybe my thing was, the word conservation wasn't a thing. They just did it. They didn't need someone telling them, hey, you're a conservationist.
You're exactly right. Like, man, you're doing a good thing. You know what? Those raccoons were overpopulated in that area. Good job, buddy. Super appreciate that. Now we got some room for everything else. It's like I said, there's so many sides of that cube, and I think you're exactly on point. It's been known as something other than conservation for probably a very long time, and people, I'm sure, have been doing it forever. They just have their different methods behind it.
So before I let you go, if someone wants to help out with the organization or get more informed, do we send them to your website? Like, where are some things they could do to kind of figure out, maybe they want to join and jump and help you out, or learn more about certain animals and stuff like that?
Yeah, so they can go to Alligator Rob, ROBB.com, or EEARSS, EEARSS.com, or .org. They all take you to the same place. We're actively searching for funding for our research. Man, research gets expensive. A lot of the different samples we take are being done in kind by the universities that we send them to. Some of them samples are $10,000 a piece, wow, which they're taking care of that part. We need help for funding for fuel and vehicles and boats, and it's every time I think we're getting somewhere, we realize, man, we don't have quite enough to make it happen. So it's funding's a huge thing, and we'll be having our EcoFest event. We had one last year. We'll be doing the same thing again this year. It'll be November the 11th, which awesome, is Veterans Day weekend at Sandpoint Park up in Titusville. We'll be doing that again this year. So by all means, if you find yourself in Titusville, come say howdy. Super appreciate it. We have our podcast.
Yep.
we do that with a local high school. So we go there. It allows the kids to run the video and the audio and the sound and the graphics and kind of learn how to do the background and all that. So they help us kind of design the program, and it's really fun to have the school and the the public school system involved with that. It's something I had been wanting to do for a very long time, and I'm super happy it's came together.
That's awesome. Could I adopt an alligator? Is that possible?
If you have the right permits, you can get yourself an alligator. Yep.
If I wanted someone like you to take care of it, could I go through your, like, in terms, like, some of those organizations where people would always give me, like, I love owls. Oh, you adopted a barred owl in Wyoming. Okay, cool. Like, what is it? What do I, when I give money, which I want to give, is that something you could do? Or are those organizations, I guess my question is, are those organizations really helping the animals, or is it going to pay people to sit in an office and send out those form emails?
There is, that's hilarious. There's nothing wrong with asking the people what your money is being used for. There's a lot of very, very good organizations out there around our country that are doing very important things for our environment and the people working in it. It's if you're concerned about that, I would suggest adding a note to your donation. Like, hey, look, I want this to specifically go for research for this, or I want this to fund your next vehicle or your next boat, or here's money specifically for education. Our big things are research and education. That's what we spend. We spend pretty much all of our time on. We don't have a whole lot of time for anything else. We do keep some animals, but those are specifically for education. We don't take anything else really in. So yeah, we wouldn't be adopting an alligator, but I could point you to some people that probably would for you.
No, I love it. This has been awesome. Frank, thank you for taking your time today, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Brother, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, hello. I'm just enjoying this nice fucking candle. Anyways, I'm John, the host of Spear Talk, and I want to talk to you about nice fucking candles. We are lucky to have Nice Fucking Candles as a sponsor of the podcast, and if you use code SpearTalk15, you get 15% off your first order, or use the affiliate link below to always get your candle needs through Nice Fucking Candles. Nice Fucking Candles are 100% soy wax. They have a 65-hour burn time, maybe more if you nurse the flame a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not an expert on flames or candles, but I will say these things burn a long fucking time. You ask me about the wick, it's a double wick for even burning, which is amazing, and they come in 3 incredible flavors. I'm not sure if you're going to be eating these candles, but if you do like them, the scents are eucalyptus and ginseng, tobacco and fireside, and seaside and driftwood. Once again, Nice Fucking Candles. They are the candle company for Spear Talk. And if you love candles and need a good scent to clear out your office, your room, your podcast room, your weight room, your whatever you're doing in a room that smells like crap, use this candle. It's amazing. Thank you. Check them out. Love Nice Fucking Candles.